you're on a lot more shaky ground. I think what you're claiming is that I've put my own standard on it, right?
No, I'm saying you haven't given a firm criteria. You've given a paradigm of which you operate on. But when I'm saying when you explore it, there is no evidence to support that paradigm outside of the text.
In comment sections of live streams that I'm on, that would be blocked. Any mocking towards Christian, any kind. But in my experience of like a live stream on maybe one of these channels, the most vilest stuff about the Prophet could be said, Aisha, all that stuff.
Well, I don't know. I don't moderate. I'm not involved, so I can't speak on that.
Yeah, but that's obviously the issue, isn't it? With the
well, he could say that they do have moderators that do block. I don't know, but I can't speak on something I don't know.
I think the question, isn't it, just upping our standards?
Yeah, definitely. And, I don't engage in that, and that's because I don't believe in it. I've never. No one can show me a statement or video where I've said Muhammad's X, Y, and Z. I can critique what some of the practices, but I'm not. I try to have a.
So you've never insulted or anything. All right, I'll If you have, I'm going to find it.
Yeah,
and make a video.
You can show me where.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I don't really know you, but I've seen your face and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I guess you were saying in terms of the main objections to Christianity were.
Yeah. So I said to you, original sin.
Yeah.
So the idea that someone would have to die to forgive me.
Okay.
Islam gives me a direct to God, and I even believe the Bible is against original sin as well.
Okay.
Talking about Ezekiel 18:20, is it? Ezekiel 18:20 talks about you not bear the sins of your fathers.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I would say that the Bible itself contradicts that notion of original sin.
Okay.
The fact that babies are born evil, that to me that's not just. They're born with other people's sin prior to it.
Well, I guess it wouldn't be that babies are born evil per se.
Well, they're born with sin, aren't they?
Yeah, we're born, which means that we are born with a what's the word? A sort of inclination towards doing evil or wrong over what is righteous.
No, but a newborn baby, according to Christianity, isn't innocent, are they? They've got sin on them already.
Well,
that's not a just concept.
I think there's a distinction. So, for example, Christians believe that if you're below the age of, or not specifically, but below the age of like consent or acknowledgement, you're actually innocent. So we would refer to the story of David where his son died, and he said, "I will see you again in heaven." Now the child hadn't had any chance to live a life, but then it was redeemed. If the child is in heaven, that means no sin is going to be held.
So a newborn baby doesn't need to accept anything. Obviously, Jesus to
and also Jesus said, if you become like the children, you'll enter the kingdom of heaven. Yeah. So it shows you that what the Christian belief of original sin is that
is your belief consensus of others? Because I've spoken to others who would disagree with you on that.
Well, it depends.
They've categorically told me that babies have sin. They need to they need to then.
Yeah, but that's why I say it would have to be speak to those people to see what they say specifically, because they would have to address those verses that I bring.
Fine.
So in terms of, for example, the age of consent, there's no definite age, but our position is like when children become self-aware to a certain point, then there is more a need for them to they become self-conscious of sin and stuff, and we have a natural desire to drift away from God, because if we look at just as an observational perspective, look at humanity, like for example, Muslims will say we're born with a natural fitra towards the belief in one God.
Yes.
And I say I disagree with this.
Do you disagree with that?
I believe we are born with a connection to God, to want to know the Most High, but I don't believe we have a fitra to believe in one God per se, because if we look at the history of mankind from an objective perspective, they have been polytheistic. So if I said to you, for example, maybe man's natural inclination is to be with a woman.
Okay, so you would say that people have a natural disposition to worship, though. You don't disagree.
Yes.
So you would agree with that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But not a belief in one God. Okay. Otherwise, we would have more monotheistic religions in the world, because that would be a natural disposition. Whereas the Islamic position is that Shaitan comes in and corrupts.
So are you polytheist?
No.
Okay.
Well, Christian is a monotheist, and I would say in the Quran
But you just said babies are born to believe in multiple gods.
No, I said our natural belief. We're not born with a natural inclination. I don't think
we are born with a natural inclination to worship.
Yes,
but you're saying that could be loads of gods.
Yes, it could be anything.
Okay. Well,
so we only find the truth through revelation.
Yeah, we wouldn't really know that, would we? I guess because you're raised and then you are.
Well, that's why I say from an objective perspective, and I'll use a contrast of if I said to you, you might believe that men are born with a natural inclination to procreate or have a family, and we can see throughout the world this is a natural disposition that happens just through observation. So if I'm an alien and I observe, what do I see? I would say yes, it seems like humankind is born to procreate because that's what seems to be the expression of the future. Where I'm arguing against the Islamic narrative to say that observational evidence doesn't support the claim. It may be true hypothetically, but observationally we cannot say that the evidence correlates with the claim. That's why I say we are born with a desire to worship. We see that through all nations, they worship some form of God, but it's never necessarily monotheistic, and that's what the whole main claim of Judaism, Christianity.
Yeah, and I guess between us, we wouldn't really know. Would we? There's no evidence either way, but we can both agree on the fact that. Have you seen there's a study by, I think, is it Justin Barrett? He took 30,000 children, studied their behaviors, and it concluded, and it's not a Muslim, but I think he might even be atheist.
Yeah, I've come across that.
He concluded that babies are, they are raised to worship. There's a higher being.
Exactly, but that's.
And then they're talking about higher being. They're not. I mean, in that study, from what I've researched, it's not saying loads of different beings. It's talking about. If you're talking about worshipping something in me, to me, but logically, it doesn't make sense to have loads of gods anyway. But to me, that study talks about
a higher
pointing
being.
towards a high being, not loads of Greek gods, not loads, not three in one, not that.
But then I believe the study didn't necessarily go into the depths
of
what is the definition of that higher being,
and
that's why we see different expressions of people attributing different things to that higher being. So that's what I'm saying. Just on the evidential.
But you consider yourself a monotheist?
Yes, and I would say the reason why, especially, there are two reasons. One, obviously, the beliefs in Christianity, but I find it strange.
So why would God make the fitra into multiple gods, in your opinion, as a Christian?
Well, this is, as in our natural fitra, but that then comes into I think it's two parts. I would say, for example, in terms of our sinful nature, we digress away from God, and God has given revelation, so that we have that desire, but we have the desire to search out that being, but we have the free will to reject or accept what we desire. We accept as the true revelation from God. Yeah,
and you believe you have the true revelation?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
definitely.
That could probably be another topic as well. Because obviously for me, I don't believe you do have the revelation. You're obviously New Testament, right?
Yeah. So
I wouldn't. It's almost logical to believe, when we go into the history of it, that the New Testament wasn't given to Jesus, was it?
Yeah, but I'll address that. But just in terms of the point of whether Christians are polytheists, for example, in Islam you cannot marry polytheists. Is that correct?
Well, I would say we talk about that a man can marry a person of the book.
Right.
There's debate on that. I would probably say that the older Christians, the truer Christians, are the ones that are monotheistic. But then the current Trinitarian ones, I would say they veered away.
But Muslims can still marry modern day Christians.
I think there's difference of opinion. I think there's different scholarly opinion on that.
Okay, but then even if there is, the divide kind of highlights that it could be. So it's your judgment is inconclusive. If you're saying we're polytheists,
I think it's in modern day it's hard to know what a Christian actually is, isn't it? How do you define a Christian? I can't define a practicing Christian. I ask Christians who Jesus is. Half of them say Son of the God is God. So I don't know how you'd really quantify that anyway.
Well, in terms of, we can look at through historically, in terms of what the Bible teaches. Obviously, you have Catholics who may believe in the Bible, but there's always a core tendency of a belief in the Gospels. And even in terms of the sort of, if you look at the lives of the apostles, I would say anyone who lives a life close to that would be deemed as a Christian.
Okay.
That is the clearest way we can say, yes, there may be some disagreements in terms of how things are practiced.
Do you accept that we're talking about Christians back in the day started out as non-Trinitarian. Unitarian Christianity
Well, it's never been
turned into this idea of Trinity was introduced later on.
So where did you get the understanding that they were Unitarians?
It was done pre-carnation, I believe.
But what Christians were Unitarians? They're original Christians. Because if we have the Bible, that is the oldest documentation from Christians.
Yeah.
So if you are, and the Bible,
but the Bible itself isn't Trinitarian, is it? So.
Well, you have to understand how the Bible is very Trinitarian, and this is the mistake people make.
Yeah.
And I can show you.
Yeah. And I know you're probably going to think that I've only taken this from Muslims. That's not the case. It's I actually looked into that part.
Yeah.
The Bible, the Trinity, if that's something towards your salvation, that's something so pinnacle to your beliefs, it should really say it, shouldn't it?
Well, that's not true, because, and I'll expand on why.
You're going to talk about Tawhid?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
But I also want to address about the children part, but I'll go back to that because I want to address the Islamic perspective on that. So, in terms of the Bible is a genre, and if you don't understand the genre,
what do you
in
mean
terms
by
of
that?
the way it's written. So, for example, if I had, for example, two films. If I had a sci-fi film and a western, they're both genres.
Different genres, okay.
And you expect different things from those genres. So in the western, you'd expect cowboys. In the sci-fi film, you would expect spaceships.
Space.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you wouldn't expect that in western. So when you understand the genre of the Bible, everything is consistent. So what is the genre of the Bible? The Bible is a descriptive book of history, not a prescriptive book. The Quran is prescriptive.
So it's testimonies.
Exactly.
Yes.
So if I went to the 1st century and asked someone what a solar eclipse was, they're going to give me a description of what it is, not a prescription of how it is.
So it's not revelation, it is a bunch of testimonies discussing what was revealed.
Well, it includes revelation, but it also includes the descriptive part of what was happening at that time for the people. So when you say, well, people make the claim, well, people can just say what God is or what God is, and that could have been revealed. The Quran is very clear on that. Allah is one, He's not begotten, He very prescriptive in terms of what that is. The Bible was never necessarily written in that perspective. So if we then take the foundation as it's a prescriptive book, what we then find is that it's a revelation of God revealing Himself to the Israelites and so forth, and how they responded to that. So within the text, you can even find where people question, what are you?
Sure.
God says, you cannot fathom what I am, because we can say, from a human mind, you can conceptualize God. But let's just say, hypothetically, if God is greater than our imagination, God would need bigger than the Bible to describe what He actually is for people to understand. We have books of quantum physics, we have books of mathematics that no one can understand, and these are things we can observe. So for someone to say, well, I believe God should fit my conception and be able to describe what I am, then that...
But as a Muslim, I have the Word of God, plus I have the Hadith, which is what you're talking about.
That's why I said...
So I have it clear, whereas you're admitting almost you don't.
But that's why I said...
You have a genre.
Exactly, because I'm saying you cannot expect sci-fi in a Western. So the Bible is written as an account of documentation of people writing down what they've experienced and witnessed of God. Because God is greater than our comprehension, so that wasn't the main purpose.
I get it. And I've done some research. I know you may not accept Bart Ehrman's sort of works, but is it true that the Gospels, we don't know who wrote them?
Let's just say, for example, we didn't know. I believe we do, but that doesn't make...
That's not an issue to you?
No, because if I took that note and wrote, Jordan is wearing a red top, green trousers, black shoes, and I left it here next week and someone picks it up, does that make it false if I don't put my name on it?
Well, if the person that wrote it was a liar, and I had no idea who it was, it would be a big issue. Massive issue.
But then that doesn't necessarily... The person can be a liar, but they can still write a truthful statement.
It could be, but I'm basing that piece of paper on my salvation.
So would you then say the criteria we should use to assess the truthfulness of that statement is to see how much of that claims we can verify? Because if it said, Jordan was wearing purple and orange, and I went to next week went to someone and said, oh, did you see Jordan here wearing orange and purple? And they said no.
So if there were differences, you would you'd reject it?
If there were differences, it would be a case of how do we...
But that's the Gospels, isn't it? Because even within the Gospel stories, there are differences when they recount, for example, the removing of the stone. How many Marys were there? Do you agree? The Gospel...
Yeah, but then there's...
So those bits of papers we're finding on the floor all say different things, and I'm supposed to collect them together and use that as my salvation.
We're moving away from the...
Okay, go ahead. I
can address that, but the initial point was, if you don't know... It's a false equivocation in terms of if you don't know who wrote something, it doesn't mean that it's false. So my claim was then we should then look, for example. Okay, fine. So for example, and I'll throw this back at you. Muslims claim that the Quran. Actually, I'll give you.
For that salvation to be true, that bit of paper needs to be what God said.
Right. So, would you agree?
Not someone's comment on what happened in an event.
But that's what we call idolatry, because the reason why it's idolatry.
What I said was idolatry. What?
Yeah, I'll tell you why.
Okay, go on.
Because if you're saying this is how it should be, then you're rejecting something based on how you perceive it to be. So if God's it should be, if it's true, then we
that's my
accept it for
standard.
it is.
That's my standard.
But you're saying it should be like this. That is that. So for example, if you say God should be one, and we're saying, well, no, God can be a triune person, and you say, and we look at the revelation, and that's what God claims about himself, then it's true. But if you say, no, I believe it should be like this, then that's idolatry, because I'll give you another example.
No, I will accept what it says if I believe that's what God has revealed.
But you can't just say, I believe God should be one because it makes sense, and then say anything else I will reject. Because then that is just yours, then following your own devices to say, well, it should be like this because you have, for example, Shia, who reject what you would say is authentic hadith about your prophet. But they'll say this is not befitting of a prophet. But as a Muslim, you would defend it because they may be sahih. So that's why I'm saying the argument of just saying, well, this is befitting or not, is not relevant, because I've seen Sunni Muslims defend certain hadiths as well, and they'll say, no, because it's true, we accept it. And that's what I'm saying is the same criteria we should have of whether the revelation of God is true or what God says about himself. So I've forgotten off.
Fine. I think originally I talked about Trinity in the thing, and then you're telling me it's a genre and it's not necessarily clear on.
So in terms of the reliability of the text, so for example, you would believe that the Quran cannot contain any mistakes if it's from God.
Yes.
So the Quran claims Jesus was a Muslim.
Okay.
Can you establish to us that Jesus was a Muslim? Because if you can't, that would be my claim that the Quran is in error on that point.
But
Muslim means. I'm saying he can define it, and then he has to prove it to me. Because of course
you don't need to prove something if you understand the definition of something.
I'm saying that the evidence has to be. So if you define what it is, then I'm saying that claim is wrong. So if you want to substantiate your claim beyond a claim, you would have to demonstrate with evidence that it's true.
I believe Jesus. I believe Jesus was a Muslim. I believe all the prophets preach one God, right? And that's because the Quran says so.
Exactly. So that is.
So you're asking me to. You're asking me to what? Prove the Quran right on that one. On that one point.
But that's my point. So then, if you believe it's true, because your claim was, if you have a piece of paper, if you don't, the Gospels is wrong. Well, how can we trust the Gospels? Because we don't know.
Presumably, you believe in previous prophets also in the same way I do, and you believe they preach one God, right?
Well, they believed in Yahweh, who was the true God.
How do you prove that? How do you prove it?
Well, I would use the text.
So you're the same as me, except that your text is unreliable, whereas mine is not.
That's why there's two criteria. One, the Bible has 66 authors. So what the mistake people make is saying because it's in the Bible, it's all the same. No, if these are texts written at different times by different authors, they are all an independent a witness. That's because remember the Bible means collection.
Okay,
of
yeah.
books. So I can look at different books by different people, historically written over.
So it's 66 human beings that have their testimony and accounts.
Yes.
Who verifies those people? How do we know they're telling the truth?
How do we know they're telling?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So again, that's why I would say, for example, we look at an internal critique and we look at an external critique. What is the evidence that we can gather to support? So that's why, for example, you said the Quran, it says Jesus is a Muslim. If I ask you what is the evidence for that, all you can do is appeal to the Quran.
Which is what you're doing too.
Look, so for example, in terms of Jesus, the life of Jesus, we have the four Gospels. They're four different independent witnesses.
Yes.
So I'm not appealing to one person. You're appealing to one authority. And then we have the external historical evidence. So, for example, if I say what was the original Injil, you will say it was lost or there was original Christians.
Yes.
We cannot find any evidence of these.
You don't believe that?
No.
Do you believe that a revelation was given to Jesus?
Jesus was the revelation.
But he must have received the revelation. Where is this?
No, that's an Islamic belief.
Okay, so it was spoken to him, he taught it to other people, they've relayed it to you in a book of testimonies.
Say that again.
So you believe that, well, essentially it's testimony, so you haven't got a revelation per se from Jesus.
No, Jesus is the revelation, so therefore people...
How did Jesus receive it?
If Jesus is God.
So he is God, so okay.
Yeah, he is the revelation.
Yeah.
So the Gospels is that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh and that he is the Messiah and the person here for our salvation. He's here to die for our sins.
Okay. So you don't even need an Injil, do you? Because he is the...
Yeah, so that's why we believe in those Gospels, because that is the test. It's the account of his sayings and it's a witness. So, because for example, we are led to believe that when prophets come, generally, Moses had Aaron, he had Joshua, Jesus had John the Baptist. Muhammad did not have anyone external verifying who he was.
What do you mean?
In terms of who was it who claimed that he was a prophet? Because remember, John the Baptist said Jesus is attested to Jesus. You had Aaron and Joshua, for example, who attested to who Moses was. I'm saying in the case of Muhammad, there was no external...
True, but in terms of me or you working out what happened back then, you kind of admitted that, so Jesus was the revelation, and we have 66 people that have written down stuff.
Over the history. So
over the history, they've written down stuff. We don't even know who some of them are, but they've written stuff down in a book. You can see that some of it doesn't even line up.
Well, I'm saying in terms of...
Whereas I have hadith, which is actually, we have libraries upon libraries of people authenticating whether these people were lying. Even if one of them missed a single prayer, we would reject it, and it wouldn't be a Sahih hadith, for example.
Do Shias accept those hadith?
From my understanding, I mean, I'm not a Shia, obviously, but there is a Shia is not going to question the what's the word? The reliability of the hadith. They may disagree with the hadith, right?
No, they reject.
So, but we still have.
For example, do Shia believe? Do Shia curse the Sahaba?
Some do, some don't.
So therefore, you're saying they're trustworthy. Now we have another group of people who are saying they are not trustworthy. So how can we then, as an independent person, say that this person is trustworthy? Because your whole premise is, well, we have the hadiths that are relayed by trustworthy people, but we have a set of people who are accusing these people of being untrustworthy. So then you're saying, well, we should ignore them and accept them as trustworthy.
But keep bringing up the Shia is probably a non-argument, because you have even more sects. So I can start bringing up saying, look what they believe, look what they believe.
From the first century, and we have to look at the claims, because remember, your claim is relies on or maybe not relies, but one of the claims you said is they are trustworthy. So the question is, how do we determine someone is trustworthy? Because my claim is actually, yes, someone should be trustworthy.
What people at the time said about them? Yeah,
but also what they're saying it should be able to be evidenced externally. Yeah. So that's why I say, as an independent person, if she is, for example, accused these people of being untrustworthy, then what reason do I have to accept that they were trustworthy? Because now we have a dispute. Yeah,
I don't know any. I haven't probably spoken to enough Shias to know of where they've actually said that hadith is unreliable, whereas you believe it is reliable. I don't have any. They'd have to look at why.
Yeah.
And it could be a case of they don't accept somebody's belief, boy back in the chain.
Yeah, but I'm just saying let's say the Sahaba that they they don't believe in or they curse. They're essentially accusing them of dishonesty or being liars.
Sure.
So then, if we now have a dispute about whether someone's trustworthy, and if a hadith goes through that person, in a theological sense, yes, you will say they're trustworthy. But now we have a dispute as to whether they're reliable. So then the only other way to see if they're reliable is to see, can we establish what they're saying with evidence. So if we're in court, if a judge is sitting there, you're making a claim, I'm making a claim, they will look at how much of the evidence do I say are verifiable. If you're telling the truth, we would naturally assume that the claims that you're making should be able to be evidenced. They shouldn't disappear, and that's why I use that as an analogy.
But
as
would you
the original
accept
Christian and the Injil, because how can what I see is, for argument's sake, I'll say the Quran is internally consistent. There are errors and stuff, but just for the sake of argument. But that doesn't make something truthful, because if we then start investigating the claims and we don't find any evidence to back it, because if the Bible is corrupted or made up, we find evidence to support it. I'll give you an example.
So you're accepting that the Quran, you're accepting the preservation of the Quran almost, right? On the reliability of it?
No.
Okay,
I'm not saying.
But can we at least say? Can we at least say I'm on firmer ground than you?
In what sense?
Well, going back to that bit of paper on the floor.
Right.
You've already admitted, like I know we're rehashing it, but you've already admitted you don't know who wrote it.
I'm just, as for the sake of argument, I can say who.
Let me break my question down.
Yeah.
How are you accepting that as revelation from God? How are you accepting a book of testimonies of who we may not know? How are you accepting that for your salvation?
Because you and I agree that if we don't know who wrote something, it doesn't mean it's false. So then, how do we find out that it's true?
It's very important to me who wrote it. Yeah, very important.
But that's irrelevant. Okay.
It may not be important to you, but I haven't conceded that.
Who wrote down the Quran?
So Muhammad recited the Quran.
Who wrote
came down from the angel Jibril.
But who wrote it? Actually,
the Sahaba, there were scribes, right? Part of the Sahaba.
How do we know that was even the angel Jibril? Because, like I said to you, the knowledge was that Jesus came with John the Baptist, Muhammad with Aaron.
If it's not angel Jibril, how do you explain? You just admitted the Quran's very consistent throughout. How do you explain it?
I said it's internally consistent, meaning. And I'm still manning the point, because I don't want to divert and say there's contradictions in here and there, which I believe, but I'm just still manning the point so we don't digress. So I'm saying if a book...
But contradictions don't matter to you, do they?
I'm saying, for example, Charles Dickens might be internally consistent in terms of the narrative. It doesn't mean it's from God. So I'm saying, even if I concede that the Quran is internally consistent, it is not doesn't mean it's reliable itself. And that's why I said, for you, example, the Quran claims Jesus is God. That Jesus was a Muslim. Do we have evidence? You say, well, the Quran said. So for me, that's not evidence. It's circular reasoning. So it's consistent in saying that Jesus is just
But then I asked you about previous prophets, and you used the same argument as a Christian. So
yeah, but I said...
like I say, I feel like we went on to then what we're standing on, and I feel like, unless I miss something in this conversation, you're on a lot more shaky ground. I think what you're claiming is that I've put my own standard on it, right?
No, I'm saying you haven't given a firm criteria. You've given a paradigm of which you operate on it. But I'm saying when you explore it, there is no evidence to support that paradigm outside of the text itself. I'm saying, that's why I said to you, with the Bible, we have independent authors of each book, so I can weigh up.
You don't know who they are?
Of course we know who they are. Some of the authors we may not know, some of the books we don't know, but are they... So if we even narrow it to the ones that we do, because I'm not just sticking to the Gospels, we know who Luke is, for example.
You agreed with my point that the Gospels even have differences between them, right? You agreed with that point as well.
In terms of some of them can be reconciled, some of them haven't been reconciled.
See, this is my issue, and I'm trying to keep it on point. Is that I don't know how you can take this book for your salvation.
Yeah, so
honestly,
again,
and that's what I'm trying to get out of you.
My point is this. For example, the Bible, the Gospels claim that Jesus was crucified under Pontius Pilate.
Sure.
We know Josephus mirrored that claim as well. Historians didn't believe that Pontius Pilate existed until 1947, where we found a plaque with his name on it, which meant he was a historical person. Now, this is a very minor person that we found that existed. And this is why I go back to the claim of, if the Quran claims that Jesus was a Muslim, and there was original Christians and there was original Injil, do we have any historical evidence to support this claim? The answer is no. Your answer then is...
Why did you bring up the crucifixion, just out of interest? And why did you bring up Josephus?
Why didn't I bring
Why did you bring that up?
No, I'm just saying that for an external critique, that we have external confirmation from someone who's not
And can we agree that Josephus and the account in the Quran, his narrative would agree with the Quran?
No, in what sense?
Well, the Quran talks about that the people would have thought it was that way.
Okay.
So obviously you'd expect historians at the time to report that way. So there's no issue there.
Okay, so then the problem is who witnessed the crucifixion? Because remember, crucifixion was a public thing. So let's just say...
Who do you think?
So let's just say because Simon Cyrene picked up the cross and whatnot, his mother saw him and the apostles ran away. But what we're saying is, okay, let's just say all that whole process was someone else. That creates two bigger problems, which I'll go into. But the first problem would be, didn't the apostles know about this? Didn't his mother know that it wasn't him? Because if they did, where are the teachings of them and that community? Because the Quran says that the Christians will be the uppermost. But the only people that have been the uppermost throughout the whole of history is the Trinitarians. So this is why, and in answer to your claim, Christians stand on firm ground, is if you follow the evidence, it leads you to Christianity. Muslims have to distort the evidence to conform to their beliefs. Why? Can you prove Jesus was a Muslim? You have to refer to the Quran. Can you prove that there were original Christians? You have to go back to the Quran. Can you prove that there was an Injil historically that was used until the time of Muhammad? Because even the Quran affirms that it says the Jews and the Christians should judge by what's with them. It even confirms that Jesus confirmed the Torah that was before him, and we have the Dead Sea Scrolls which came before him. So if you're arguing that there is a different Injil or a different Torah out there, where is it? So you're saying I shouldn't believe in a book that all the evidence, and that's why I still mind your point, so we don't know who the authors are, but I should not believe in a book because we don't know the authors.
Do you believe the Torah was written down?
Yes, by Moses. So yeah, of course. So, but I'm just saying.
But there was no Injil. There was no for you.
Yeah, I'm saying there was no Injil. We have the Gospels and we have the Torah. And if you are saying that you believe something, I'm saying where is the evidence to support it? All you're doing is using circular argumentation, which is a theological argument. I'm actually trying to use evidence outside and different sources of information to say.
Okay, so what's your evidence that David is a prophet?
What's my evidence that David is a prophet? So in the Psalms that David...
You've used a book.
Yeah, but
You've done the same thing.
but let me say the difference. The Psalms talk about Christ. So if I believe that Jesus was crucified, it's a prophecy because I would have to ask how, and we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we have the Psalms. So if I see the story and it says this then evidences something that's happened pertaining to Christ, then why should I not believe he was a prophet? And also, we have the testimony. So obviously the books were given to the Israelites.
Okay.
And where was the dispute? Because the problem with the Quran is there's a dispute in terms of its authenticity. So if David was a prophet, show me who throughout the age of history made a dispute about it. Everyone seemed to accept it. So it's compounded by the fact that there are disputes because you're saying there was an original Injil. The Christians are saying, no, this is the original Injil. So then we have to then go to the evidence.
Yeah.
So the less evidence we have, we can only rely on what is there.
Yeah.
The more evidence, we have to take a holistic
Yeah.
approach.
I mean, I would say I could even use your book to prove Jesus was a Muslim. I could even use your book. If I start in the Gospel Mark the way he's described,
go on.
If we talk about how he prays, if we talk about all these things.
Okay, let's.
So, but this is where this will lead us to the Trinity, right? This is leading us to.
Well, here's the problem.
I've never ever had the Trinity explained to me.
Right.
This is before I was Muslim.
Yeah.
Any live streams, any Speaker's Corner talk, no one has ever described the Trinity.
Right.
And I can give you about 50 different ways it's been described to me.
No problem.
What's yours?
But if people describe it in 50 ways, that's irrelevant. Why? I can go
it's the main doctrine of your belief.
I can go to this part and I can ask, does Allah have a shin? Is it physical or literal? Does Allah rise above the
No, but
throne?
you're talking about Aqidah, you're talking about something different.
that
We
is-
don't disagree on Tawheed.
Yeah, but
Even the Shia, the Sunnis,
Right.
everyone is unanimous
Yes,
on
but
Tawheed.
just
The
because-
Trinities, you guys are
but-
completely
no,
all
but
over the
you have
place.
to be consistent in that stand, because you're saying, well, we all believe God is one. That's irrelevant, because if you're describing Allah...
Yeah, but
it
whether
has
somebody believes Allah has a shin literally or
Right.
whether it's metaphorically does not take away from the fact that Tawheed is one
but here's
God.
the problem.
You have a real issue
But
with
here's
your
the-
Trinity.
But here's why it's irrelevant. Because if Allah is so simple, but then there's differences in Al-Qaeda about his attributes, whether it's physical or literal, then Christians can disagree or have not a proper understanding of what God is.
God.
And this is why...
Nah.
But this is why
But do you accept Muslims don't have that?
yes, in terms of saying, all they say is Allah is one. Anything else we don't know.
No, but
Because-
having one God and having a
Right.
Trinity is a massive, that comes way before
But
we
this
sort of
is-
start
but
talking
this,
about.
But this is why I told you about the genre of the Bible.
Okay.
If the Bible is describing, is not concerned about being prescriptive, we can make we try to formulate how God is, but God has described how He is, but it's not prescriptive. That's why you can have differences in opinion. But
Okay.
people, all Christians, apart from heretics, will say they believe in the Father, the Son,
heretics, yeah.
the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. That is
Yeah.
what God is. Then you'll say, you ask the how. So that's why I'm saying to you, when you come to your Aqidah,
say that again, that
you
point.
ask the how.
But say that again. What did you say? All Christians agree on what?
The Father, Son, and
The Holy Spirit.
Yes.
But they're co-equal partners. Bit. That's not, is it?
Well, Christians will, unless they're not informed in terms of the how. So they'll affirm. So as a Christian, you will affirm
Yeah.
the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
And do you
That's the
believe someone
Trinity.
is Christian if they don't accept Jesus as God? If they just say He's the Son?
Yeah,
They're still Christians.
they're heretic. Yeah.
They're heretic.
No.
They're not Christian.
Because
So it's a massive thing.
No,
It's a
because
massive thing.
the
You're
Bible
admitting
in
it.
itself.
Whether someone believes
No,
Allah
but-
has a shin or not
but let me
does not
tell
take
you
them
why.
out of the.
The
does not
Bible
take
in
them out of the-
itself says, "He who does not believe that Jesus is He who has come in the flesh is of the Antichrist." So if you're not affirming, and that's from the Bible itself, and I can show you the scripture, it says that if you do not affirm that Jesus is who He is, that He's come from the Father into the flesh, as per John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word was good with God, and the Word was God, and it says He has come in the flesh. If you don't affirm
Was this an
that,
added verse?
no, you're thinking of John 17:3
Okay, go
in
on.
terms of the Father, Son, and the
So
Holy
this was an
Spirit.
original verse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So we are saying in terms of the how, because that's what Muslims like to
Okay.
address Christians on, is the how of the Trinity, and they struggle to.
But can you explain
answer
the Trinity
how.
to me?
Yeah, I can, but let's just not divert. But I just want to sort of roll back a few parts, because I even said, for example, in terms of like with the children and even the evidence part. But I do want to bring up the children, but I want to. Yeah. So in terms of, again, so we sort of diverted from the point of, can you prove that Jesus is a Muslim? And you said, well, you have to believe the Quran is true. So my then question is, we know there are many false religions in this world. Ahmadiyya say that they believe in the Mahdi, Shias believe in something else. They will all say, when you debate them or Muslims debate them, they will ask, what is the criteria, what is the evidence that they use to support their claim?
Yeah.
So I'm saying to you, if the Quran is true and it's from God, we then have to establish, how do we know it's true? My argument would be, well, with the Bible, we have 66 authors and they were written at different times, so we can compare it to what the others were saying as independent witnesses. I'm not just relying on one book. I'm then throwing that back to you, because I'm saying, you asked me how do I know David was a prophet, I said if he wrote something and I believe that's what happened to Christ, like crucifixion and stuff like that, then I would say this guy must be a prophet.
You're getting that from the Bible.
I'm using it from a prior revelation, which was an independent book, not written at the same. If they were all written at the same time, then you would have a point. But we know they weren't written at the same time. They were written by different people. We can look at the style of writings. All scholars will say they're written by different people, because we can even look at how the style of writing, the way they're describing stuff. So I'm appealing to a prior revelation. Now I'm asking you.
Do you agree that you're relying on a human being?
Prophets are human beings.
Yeah, but
Was Muhammad a human being?
yes.
So
I don't believe Muhammad is the author of the Quran, do I?
So how do we know?
You can dispute that, but you accept in my paradigm, I'm going by what Allah said. On your paradigm, it's what you said, you're going on human beings, and we've already earlier talked about
human beings. But if
human being testimonies.
But if those human beings were prophets and they were inspired, then how am I relying on human beings?
Okay.
So
I can see that point.
So I'm asking you to now, in terms of.
How do you know what David said? A human being wrote down what he said and told you, and you've read that. So it's still human beings.
But who wrote down the Quran? Human beings.
No, but the Quran was on. You can disagree with that point, but obviously, but that's a different point. That's a different point because as a Muslim, I don't accept that.
Yeah, but you're just making theological arguments.
No, but I don't accept it. You need to accept that you are using human being testimony for your salvation. So I don't concede I'm doing that. You can question that.
No. You're using.
But in my belief, the Quran is the verbatim word of God, said down by Angel Jibril.
The Torah was written by Moses.
Yes.
That's not human testimony. The Psalms were written by David. That's not human testimony.
Yes.
So we have books by the prophets. That's not human testimony. So yes, we have, for example, the Gospels where we will say, like Luke was an apostle or a prophet or something like that. But there's nothing wrong with that testimony. So that's what I'm saying to you.
Okay.
Now, in terms of assurance, how can we establish? Because I want to ask.
Are you avoiding the Trinity question?
No, I'm going to answer it, but I want to press you about Islam so people who are listening can see the standards that we're operating at, rather than I'm just going to the usual Muslim sort of talking points. And I'm happy to address it, but let's have a dialogue.
But I think...
Because you said, for example...
We're discussing main. When we're talking about Tawheed, Trinity, or we're talking about main, we're talking about...
Because we've diverted a little bit, and I'll say why. You said you didn't believe in the Christian position of
original sin,
and that children are born evil.
Yes.
Now, are you aware in the Hadith it says that Allah does?
I also talked about the fact that I don't believe someone needs to
that's fine.
pay off a sin for my sins.
Right.
And I also mentioned that in the Bible it even says that.
Right.
But you didn't address those problems.
Okay, because we jumped to many points, but I can address that. So the first point is, would you agree that there's hadith that says that Allah has made people for hellfire? And I can show it to you.
Yeah. So I believe everything's already written, right?
Right, but then there's a hadith that it says, I think even a child was a people, where it's narrated by Aisha, and I can find it, where I believe it says even a child went to hell because it was written down. Mm-hmm. So you're saying you have a disagreement about children being, let's say, let's just say.
But you're sort of bringing an issue of the free will and
No, but the thing is, if a child,
because I believe everything's written, but I still believe things are.
So I'm saying you have no problem with a child dying young and going to hell because Allah prescribed it, but then you have an issue with.
Are you talking about Khidr, or what are you talking about with that?
Who?
Khidr in the Quran.
No. Yeah, actually, Qadr is one of those examples, but there's a hadith that addresses something different. But even, that's a good point, where it says, well, he was destined for hellfire, so therefore...
No, but what that shows is, that's showing us Muslims that Allah knows everything, so Allah knows what was going to happen to this child as he grew up, right?
Okay.
So it's just basically just describe. It's a beautiful verse, actually, because it's describing about...
So that means that
we don't know all the wisdom. We don't know all the wisdom.
So either that child was born evil, to do the things of the people of evil. So then why is it if the child died, then it
there's a difference between him being born evil and Allah knowing what was going to happen, right?
Well, it says the hadith says it's prescribed, and there's obviously different opinions. Well, there's a lot of hadiths that imply that everything.
So, are you arguing for original sin? Are you arguing that?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand why
I reject it.
But then when we look at the Islamic perspective, I don't think it offers any better solution. But
Islamic's pretty clear about children being born and then not being accountable until they are a certain age. There's no talk of a child being born with sin. The Quran is very specific about us not bearing the sins of our forefathers. You can go to a hadith about a certain. I've given you your Bible verse, and also in the Quran it talks about it.
Yeah. So in terms of the Christian position, as I was saying, is that we are born with a natural disposition to sin, and that it's only through the
I agree
salvation.
with that. A Muslim would agree with that.
Yeah, so that's what the original sin is, that we're born with that natural disposition, and it's only
So,
reconciling.
so if I can, because this is something I've learned then. So
Yeah.
for you, in Christianity, they're not bearing sins of Adam and Eve. That's not true. Are you saying that right? They don't bear the children aren't paying for the child, the sin of Adam.
No. But they're not going to on Judgment Day to.
Are they bearing the sin of Adam or not?
No. So that's what I'm saying. On Judgment Day, you're not going to be accountable for Adam's sin. We're paying the consequence of their sins, meaning they were the first fallen people, so they broke the disconnect with God. And as a result, we are all born of the same nature of that disconnect with God. So we're born into a sinful nature. So we're paying the consequences. And actually, there's even hadith that says similar things, but I won't go down that part because there's a hadith that says if it wasn't for Eve, that Muslim women wouldn't. I can't remember exactly what it is. I can find it, but there's a consequence from Eve's actions. Okay. So, and the other thing you asked about was other things, animal sacrifice. So now you said you don't believe that someone should die for their sins.
No, it was more to do with the fact that so Jesus came down and died for I'm forgiven because Jesus had to die.
Yeah,
I know where you're going to go with it.
No, all I'm going to say is we have a temple in Israel right now, which was dedicated to something. That something was dedicated to animal sacrifices. Now, if you, from an Islamic perspective, want to explain to me why there was a temple and what was it used for, if you say you don't know, then that actually reinforces my position, because I will tell you why God instituted the temple, because it was.
But it's different, isn't it? It's different in terms.
So do you agree that? Let's just
I agree. I know where you're going.
That the temple was used for animal sacrifices.
Yes.
So now, from an Islamic perspective, can you tell me why did Allah institute that temple for animal sacrifices?
Yeah. No, I don't want to talk out of turn with this, but there's a difference between forgiving sins and things like that as to your whole salvation relying upon it, right?
But that salvation is dependent of the understanding of the animal sacrifices. So that's why I'm saying, well, if you disagree, give me the Islamic perspective of a real thing that we know was there and was practiced, and what is the explanation? Because if you cannot explain, then it seems...
No, but I know for sure.
Right.
I don't have to sacrifice an animal for my Islam.
Yeah, but...
So you're giving an example of something. You need to believe that Jesus sacrificed for you.
But here's the problem.
It's not the same.
Who ordered the temple to be built?
Yeah, but it's still not the same, is it?
Yeah, but I'm saying if Allah instituted it for a purpose, unless we understand the purpose, because that purpose relates.
So let's saying it for those people, there was a place where that happened, right? So, let's saying that was the case.
The Christian perspective is that in God's eyes, every sin, the consequence should be death, because God hates sin, and if God is just, in God's eyes, He has to punish every sin by death.
Okay.
Now,
and God had to die for that.
As a mercy, they used animal sacrifices temporarily. Now, that's why I said if you disagree, you'd have to give me the Islamic explanation of it. If you don't, then this is the only legitimate explanation that says that.
But I just feel like I understand the comparison you're trying to make.
Because
you're talking about a man saying you believe a man was God, came down and died for the whole of humanity. Right.
An eternal sacrifice.
This is your.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So. I'm basing it off evidence, and this is why I said you're basing it off. Well, I think this makes sense. I don't understand. This makes sense. That's not
really. Do I need to sacrifice anything?
No.
Does anything need to be for me to have a sin forgiven by Allah?
Right.
Do I need to go through any intermediary? Do I need to sacrifice anything?
No.
So for your salvation, do you need it?
No.
You needed Jesus to have died for you.
Yeah, but I don't have to sacrifice anything.
No, but you need to have believed that there was a sacrifice done for your sins.
So the reason is
I don't have that.
Yeah, but
in my
here's
doctrine,
the thing. But again, you've skipped the problems. So I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
I do understand what you're saying.
All you're doing is sidestepping the issue and say, well, I don't have that problem originally. I'm saying.
I'm just saying there's a difference between the comparison you're making. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying for me to believe in Christ, Christ was the fulfillment of the law. You have no explanation of why they sacrificed animals or what the purpose was. So how can you dispute something if you don't know what the purpose of it was?
It's not important to me.
But that's the whole point.
Yeah.
So I'm relying. So you said to me, if I have a book that's written by people and I don't know who they are, why should I trust what they're saying?
Yeah.
Every question I ask you, you don't have an explanation for. I'm saying when I look at an external temple, I know that's a real thing. If that external temple is attributed to David, to Solomon, and whoever, I can research through my scriptures what the purpose for that temple was, and that validates my belief.
But again, you're criticizing me for something you're doing.
I'm saying all you can do is appeal to the Quran.
Can I not use historians? Can I not use hadith?
The historian, the hadith.
For my belief, which we talked about earlier.
But this is what I'm saying. The books that I'm appealing to were written in a historical context, predating my beliefs. I am referring to something that was written independently by different people over centuries.
Sure.
You are appealing to a book by one person and hadith that were written afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm asking you to prove something beforehand, because my main claim, and this is what you seem to be bypassing, is that I still mind your point. I said, let's say we don't know, for example, the Gospels who wrote it.
Yeah, which you accept some of that.
What my criteria is to look at the evidence around it. So internal evidence from the books itself, who are written by independent witnesses, and external evidence. So if I look at the external evidence of a temple, and I want an explanation of what it was used for, if the books of Moses are the only evidence that I have, and there's no one disputing it, and it says that it was used for animal sacrifices, and I use all the other books of the Bible, all the way up to Jesus, to understand that the cultural context for this was animal sacrifices to be performed. Why would I reject it? Because that is historical evidence. You're saying, well, I don't know. But you're saying I don't know what the purpose of the animal sacrifices were. But I'm saying, well, I believe Jesus.
Did I say that?
Yeah, I said, what was the purpose of the animal sacrifices? You said, well, I don't know.
I talked about the forgiving of sins for sacrifice.
Exactly. So I'm saying the animals.
Was I wrong?
About Jesus dying for sins?
No, about
the animals. Yeah. So I'm saying, well, if Jesus comes and says he's the replacement of that, then we have the external evidence, because we know culturally that was what they're practicing, and we have the testimony of Christ, who gives the explanation that he is the fulfillment of that law. Now, if you disagree with any of that,
you don't have the testimony of Christ, though, do you? You have the testimonies of someone else for Christ.
Yeah, that's still a testimony. Okay. If I write down your statement, that's still
but you don't have Christ's words. Just to clarify.
He doesn't need to write it down himself. Okay. In the same way, Muhammad never wrote that words down himself. The hadith are the sayings or written by someone else. You accept it as reliable.
You're comparing a prophet to a god there, but
But what's the difference?
I get the comparisons you're doing.
Yeah, but what I'm highlighting is the inconsistencies in you're saying, well, one's a god,
I understand what you're saying. I don't think you've highlighted.
Yeah, but you're saying one's a god, one's a prophet. Let me ask you, what relevance does that make in terms of who wrote it down?
But I believe the Quran is from Allah, right?
Yeah, so but you said Christ's words weren't his testament because they're written down by someone else.
Yes.
So what difference does it make? Because I'm saying the hadith, for example, were written down by someone else. You accept that. So what difference does it make if it's God or...
and then we're going to get back into the kind of like... I'm going to talk about the reliability of hadith. It's going to be a circular conversation.
Well, that's why I say when we go to the reliability, I asked you to prove to me historically that Jesus was a Muslim. And you said, well, Jesus prayed like a Muslim. Well, as a Muslim, can you call God your father?
Can I call God my father?
Yeah.
No.
So when we look at those same verses, because what people like to do, they like to split those verses into two, say, well, Jesus prayed like a Muslim, but they forgot where he said called God Father. Okay. So
he prostrated, right? You accept that?
But the whole thing of Jesus being a Muslim is not just saying, well, he prostrated, but he also, in that prostration, called God his father. So if you're then saying...
according to your book,
Well, you're going by our book to say he prostrated. You're not going by anything else.
No, I don't use your book as revelation, but I'm just saying, from my understanding of your book, what I've read, I could also deduce that Jesus was a Muslim.
Yeah, but that's why I said that same verse you have to then look at the whole verse, not chop it in half.
Yeah.
Because in that verse it says.
So you're saying because he said father,
Yes.
that's not like a Muslim. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
So any verse, it's very easy to dissect something, and as a Sunni, I heard debates with Shias, and they'll do the same thing.
I understand your point
So
on
that's
that.
what I'm saying.
So are you going to explain the Trinity?
Yeah, we can get into the Trinity.
Go on.
But so
I feel like this is not one. That's not a topic you want to get into.
No,
you don't have to. You don't have to.
No,
I'm only asking because it's never been explained to me well.
Yeah, but when I
every other point I've given to you, you've gone straight to it and gone, you know what?
Yeah,
I've said to you Trinity, you'd be like, you know what? Let me have a think.
Because I'm doing a lot of explaining, but I want to also push back on what you believe as well, because I want to because you said those two main reasons were the reasons why you didn't believe in Christianity. So I'm trying to just go through methodologically why your conclusion.
But Trinity was my number 2.
Yeah.
I said original sin and Trinity.
Yeah, I know.
And we haven't gone anywhere near Trinity.
Yeah, because we discussed a lot of other things. So what was the main objection to the Trinity?
Obviously, I'm a monotheist.
Okay.
So to split Jesus into 3 co-equal beings,
right,
makes no sense to me.
So you're basically.
And I'm just saying. All I'm saying to you is I'm saying it's never been explained to me in a way that's coherent.
Does it need to be coherent? Do you understand quantum?
Does it not for you?
It doesn't need to. It's coherent
fine.
to me, but I'm saying.
Then that's your answer. Then that's fine.
I'll
That's fine.
For
me, it needs to be.
I'll explain it.
For me, it needs to be.
Do you believe quantum physics exists? Is a real thing?
Yeah. Now you're going to say, can I explain it?
Right.
I don't need to believe quantum physics exists for my salvation.
That's relevant because
it's pretty relevant to this.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's why I accuse.
So you're basically belittling the Trinity to just a scientific kind of.
No, because I'm trying to break down your point and I'll expand on it. But let's start with, because my argument and what I'm going to build on is that ignorance is not an excuse for incompetence. And that's what a lot of people, I feel, who stick to this narrative display. Yeah. Because when I ask them about different things, I want to see how consistent they are in their use of logic and their understanding. But what I find...
But you do agree, I'm not coming up to you saying 1 + 1 + 1 is stupid. I'm not doing that. I just want it coherently explained to me because I've never had that done.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So the problem is, if you say God should be coherent, because would you say God is greater than the universe, God is greater than quantum physics, God is greater than mathematics?
Yes, so would you.
Exactly. So my reasoning would be, if there are things of science that I don't fully understand, why should I understand God's full nature? Because God is greater than these things that we can evidence. So if you're saying, well, it should be understandable, I would say that is the logic I would apply to a story.
But do you believe God, and I know these are all things that you've heard before and stuff, but do you believe God is all-powerful, eternal?
Yeah.
You believe all those things?
Yeah. And
yet in your Trinitarian belief, you believe that God came down as a man.
Yeah, but
that needs to be, for me, that is going completely against God's nature. And so that's a big red light. That's a massive, like, that's not just a little, I don't really understand it. Do you believe in quantum physics? That is like,
again, here's the problem with, and again, the inconsistencies of your argument. Do you believe Allah can enter creation?
Yeah, but
because that's a predicate of what
not really. Of
course,
not really.
Because if you believe that God can enter creation, then you should have no problem with.
But what's the problem with that? What's the problem with that? With believing in entering creation?
Because human is creation, right?
But what's the issue with it?
Yeah, you're the one who has an issue with God becoming a human.
So are you saying that by God entering creation, he becomes a creation, or what's
No, I'm asking you what your opinion is, because some Muslims believe that, but I'm asking you.
But take this bottle, right? My fingers in the cup, right?
Yeah.
In the bottle.
Right.
So I've entered the bottle.
Right.
What's the issue with that? But you could say I've entered the bottle.
Okay. So, but that's what I'm saying. What's the issue with that? If your position is your finger can't enter the bottle, and evidence shows that, well, actually your finger did go in the bottle, you have a contradictory position. That's why I'm clarifying what your position is first. Because if you believe God cannot enter creation, then we would have to look at some of the hadiths and some of the things that's said in the Quran, which seem to be contradictory to that, because many Muslims will say, well, Allah can't enter his creation because he will become creation. So to keep the argument simple, if Allah does enter his creation and does become creation, then what is the problem with God becoming human?
Why can't you just explain Trinity? Why is that?
You brought up the point about...
No, but I said to you, explain the Trinity.
I would tell you
You've
why.
gone, well, as a Muslim, you believe that. And I get what you're trying to do, but
no, because
if you can't do it, just say you can't do it.
Because I said
or
to you,
if it's not important, then we don't need to carry on with that.
You sidestep because
I'm not sidestepping.
I brought up the quantum physics and I said to you...
But that was a nonsense. That was a nonsense thing to say.
Why?
Because quantum physics isn't deciding my salvation.
Okay. So God's revelation.
Yeah.
So this is the point, and this is why I'm trying.
Knowing the attributes of God
trying to break
is
down.
extremely important.
Right.
Is it not? Is it not?
Okay. If I show to you within the scriptures, written, and we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, where it says God will enter His creation, and there will be a crucifixion, and there will be all these things that happen that are related to Christ. You're saying I should reject these prophets because I don't believe it's possible, even though I can read for myself that these things were written before it occurred. Because you keep asking me, what is my belief that this is from God? I said, who something is written by is irrelevant. If I can read for myself...
Yeah, to me that was still unbelievable.
If I can read that in the book of Isaiah 53, that it says there will be a crucifixion thousands of years before it happened, and I know Christ was crucified, then why shouldn't I believe in it? So I'm saying because your preposition of the belief in the Quran was that if it's from God, then it's true.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying the same thing likewise, that if it's from God, then it's true. So if God describes his nature, I'm not going to say, well, it doesn't make sense. How can God become a man? Because if I see the prophets have prophesied this and it happens and the fulfillment is through Christ, I don't need to reason about it. I believe it because it came from God's revelation.
The two things you said that I found still unbelievable, and like I say, is that you said, firstly, it doesn't matter who wrote these books in the Bible. To me, that's still like, wow. Second thing is, it doesn't really matter, like, if we don't understand the Trinity, it don't really matter. Like, you guys kill each other over that doctrine. Like I was reading the other day that a whole country was wiped out by Christians because it wasn't Trinitarian. And you're saying, well, it don't really matter if you... No, to me, I don't understand why you are so easy to just go, you know what?
No, but I think...
and then you'll move on to my beliefs about Islam.
No, but the reason why, what I'm trying to do is highlight, if you're holding me to a certain
I get what you're doing. I understand.
Because that's why the discussion is about why you left Islam.
I didn't leave Islam.
Left Christianity.
But remember,
not that you didn't leave Christianity, but you didn't believe in it. So I'm saying to you, we live in a rational world where people should be applying the same standards to the way they analyze things. So I'm saying, okay, if that was your criteria, let's look at what you believe in and see if you hold yourself to that same standard. If you don't, then I find very big inconsistencies in that testimony of where it doesn't make sense, because for me, there should be a level of consistency. So that's why I'm trying to make this a two-way conversation.
I understand.
And not just me defending
I understand. You're not on trial, it's not an interview.
Yeah. So in terms of
are you going to explain the Trinity?
Yeah, so in terms of the Trinity, that's why I asked you, what don't you understand about the Trinity? Because you said it doesn't make sense, for example.
Yeah. I talked about God's attributes, and then I was coming down as a man.
So in terms of, you said, God being co-equal. How long?
Well, first
conversation we'll wrap up soon.
Firstly, what do you believe in the Trinity? Can you explain it to me? Your belief of the Trinity. What is it?
Yes. All right. We'll finish.
Okay.
So my understanding of the Trinity is that the Father is eternally existent, the Son was eternally begotten, and that the Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son, and they all act in different ways. They act in unison. So the reason why we would say there's one God, because there's one God in essence, but there are three persons. So now people say, well, how does that make sense? Well, that's why I'll ask you about where do you get your understanding of what
Stick on it.
No, but this is why I say, where do you get your... And that's why I want to break down the argument. Let's analyse what our understanding of one is. Because one can have many meanings. And if you say, well, it's logical, what is your logic based on? That's why I appeal to quantum mechanics, quantum physics, because there are things I can demonstrate within that are called counterintuitive, but they're not wrong. So that's why I'm saying, don't be fooled by your faculties, just be like, oh, that makes sense.
Does the Holy Spirit have a will?
Does the Holy Spirit have a will?
Yeah.
It does the will of the Father. And, in terms of will, they share one will. In terms of
So they can't disagree.
They can't disagree, and I'll tell you why. Does God know what's right?
Yes.
So can God go against what's right?
No.
So if the Holy Spirit is God and Jesus is God and the Father is God, that means they know what is right.
And the things that Jesus didn't know, well, I won't go, I know you already know that what I'm going to say, but the things that Jesus didn't know, how do you reconcile that? He was suddenly a man person, like he lost his divinity on earth?
No, because God, in terms of, was, and the thing is,
I'm referring to we're referring to the fig tree and not low in the last hour.
Yeah, but
how do you reconcile it?
Oh, still,
I'm going through it quickly because you know the argument. But I just want to know how you reconcile that.
Yeah, but that's going off topic, because I'm going to summarize it in terms of, we're talking about, I want to just generalize what the Trinity is. So, and how I come to the conclusion of the Trinity, because your main claim was it was illogical, and we can another time go into the specifics. So
and just to confirm, you don't think it's that important for Christians to really know this anyway?
No, I'm saying, as in terms of doctrine and trying to understand it, yes. Can we fully know the nature of God?
Okay.
Or does God's nature have to conform to what we believe is?
Like, would Bob the Builder be sitting at home going, "Yeah, I really agree with Paperboy's Trinity"? There, is he going to be?
But I haven't given you the definition.
No, I know you haven't. But would he agree with you?
Yeah. What is my point? What have I said so far?
I don't know yet.
Well, then how can he agree?
I just want to know if he would disagree, if he would agree with if he shares your same belief about what you're going to say.
Yeah.
I don't need to know what you're going to say to know if he's going to believe it or not.
I would say any Christian would listen to
any Christian will agree with it. Okay, I just want to know.
So what is my claim? I'm saying that because you have a God that's one and that's triune, because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's false. Will every Christian agree with that?
I would agree with it, yeah.
Exactly. So, and my second point was that, and I appeal to things through science to demonstrate that what you think is rational is not necessarily rational by a scientific perspective, because there are things that can't be explained scientifically that can be explained, which we accept, but then we want to limit God into what we perceive of God. So if God is one, you're saying, well, how can three persons make sense? That's a triune God. But if God lives outside of outside of creation, and God is nothing like creation, because your Quran says Allah is not like anything in creation. But in your terms, He is, because Allah is one person, and human beings are one person. We're saying God is one being, but three persons, which is nothing like creation. So then you're rejecting it, saying, well, I don't understand it. But then this is why I said, well, I go back to what the Revelation describes, and that's how I understand God. I said the Bible was not prescriptive, it's descriptive. So then Christians have looked at the descriptive verses and come up with a doctrine.
Yeah.
For example, and I'll ask this to any Muslim.
Is this a hard question for you?
I've given you an example.
Well, can you summarize your?
So I said the Father
is
eternally existing.
Yeah.
The Son is eternally begotten.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit is through the Father and the Son. So that is the Trinity formula. Then you're going into specific, well, how did Jesus know about the fig tree and whatnot? And I said that's a conversation itself, which maybe for another time. So I'm saying, in a nutshell, that is what the Christian believes.
And they're all co-equal in your eyes.
Yes. In terms of
and
essence.
The essence is one. Three persons, one essence.
Because you have something what is called the economic Trinity, which is where where Jesus, for example, says
and they can never disagree.
Well, how can they disagree?
Yeah,
because and this is
Jesus asked the Father for advice, doesn't he, and things like that. So they clearly don't necessarily know.
This is another error in the Quran, because I asked you, can God knows what's right, and you said God will always do what's right. So if we're using a proposition that Jesus is God, the Holy Spirit is God, and the Father is God, they would all by default, regardless if you want to call that polytheism or whatever, they would all by default have to agree what is right. So this is where we talk about the economic Trinity.
Well, that's where we got onto they're all knowing how the other things. But I know we don't have to get onto that, but that's why that question came up.
Yeah, but all I'm saying in terms of how but that's what I'm saying. So I can explain something to you and it will never make sense. And that's why I said, well, in terms of if we appeal to science black holes, or lots of different things. There are a lot of paradoxes in this universe that we can't explain. So my question
There are parts of Islam that we said you may not know this,
but
right?
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, and Christians will
But
agree
not
with me.
in our main.
Or Bob at home will agree with me.
Yeah.
Is that there are many paradoxes within this universe that we cannot fully explain. I do not see why God should be fully explainable. What your retort would be, well, God should be simple to understand. Why, if God is greater than the universe and we do not fully understand the universe, should we be able to simplistically understand the mind of God, the will of God? Even the Bible says, my thoughts are higher than your
But
thoughts.
a Muslim would agree with you on that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, because when we start going into the granular details, well, this and that, and we can discuss it, but I'm just saying in terms of the Trinity as a concept in itself, I don't believe ignorance should be an excuse for incompetence, and that's why I would then appeal to things in science that people aren't aware of, because are you aware, for example, within the realm of quantum physics, that something more than one can be described as one?
No.
Okay, let me just show you, and I'll wrap up in a second. And this is why it's like, for me, when I hear that, it's no different to people who worship the sun because they saw the sun rise and come down. It's like, oh, well, logically, that must be a god because it makes sense to me. But I'm just saying, I'm sticking to what the Revelation describes and then trying to make sense of what God is through that. So, for example, you have something called quantum entanglement.
I've heard of it.
And it says entangled particles would remain connected even if they were on the opposite side of the universe. And there's also this one where it says this is the most famous of the paradoxes. It involves a pair of particles linked by the strange quantum property of entanglement. Entanglement occurs when two particles are so deeply linked that they share the same existence. Now, this.
So what you're saying to me, let's say we're in a conversation, you're trying to get me to accept Christianity. You're just saying, look, Jordan, you may not know about the Christianity, it may not all make sense to you, but accept it.
No, because I've just shown you, for example, that under quantum physics, and you just read it for yourself, it says two particles
fine.
can share the same existence. So I'm saying there's nothing like God. But if you're saying, most people would not believe that exists. Because if I had two tennis balls and I said to them, can these two things share the same existence? They'll say that's logically impossible. But under quantum physics, they prove that atoms can do that. So what are you basing your understanding upon? You're basing your understanding of what you've observed in the universe. But there are other things that have been observed in the universe which you're not aware of. And that's why I'm relating that to the understanding of God. Because if I'm saying the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit share the same existence, we say share the same essence, then that is...
They don't share the same attributes, do they?
No, but that's what I'm saying. The atoms don't share the same attributes either. But they're saying, so you would have to refute what the scientists say on a quantum level. Yes, because I'm saying in a similar way, if you apply that logic to...
But we're talking about salvation, though.
But again, so I'm talking about reality. So I'm saying to you, listen to what you're saying. You're saying my salvation should be based on something I understand. Is that fair?
Yeah.
So I'm then
something I worship, something inside in my afterlife. It can't be so wishy-washy like this. You can use the atoms as examples, but that doesn't really.
But that's what I'm saying. But when I ask you about evidence about Jesus, the original Injil, that's all wishy-washy. But that's fine for you.
Really?
So
I said about the Quran.
Yeah, but that's
to me that's not wishy-washy.
Yeah, but I'm saying
to you maybe.
Yeah, I'm saying wishy-washy means that we cannot establish the truth. That there was an original Injil, that there was an original Torah, that someone else was on the cross, that there was original Christians. I can keep going on. Like the Quran talks about Dhul Qarnayn.
So do you think we have the original Torah with us today?
We have a copy of what was handed down. So we don't have the exact book. But
do you agree with me then?
But we have the. It's like we don't have the original Quran. We don't have the original Quran. That's why, for example, that whole Yasakadi...
That's something completely different.
No. Okay,
something completely different.
What is your understanding of having the original Injil and Torah? Because I'm going to apply that same criteria
so no verses, like no verses added, taken away.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I show you to you from Islamic history that verses have been taken away...
Yeah, show me.
Okay. Because the reason why I try to go through step by step is because
I get you. You're trying to see the standard, right?
Yeah, and I feel like it's very, very inconsistent.
Yasser Qadhi wasn't even talking about what you're mentioning.
Yeah.
He was talking about the different dialects of it, right?
Yeah,
which were all revealed to Prophet Muhammad.
The
peace
question
upon him.
was, if I gave you a blank mushaf, can you
Yeah.
write down
No, but-
what was revealed by
Yeah.
Muhammad? He said no.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yes.
So it was even predating.
Yes.
Predating that.
But we're not talking about verses missing and stuff like that, are we? We're talking
we are.
about the
And
obviously
I'll-
revealed about the vowels and the different dialects and things like that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'll prove to you. Because people, especially a lot of Muslims, have been fooled into believing into straw man arguments. Which
No.
actually,
I understand the misunderstanding about preservation of the Quran, and Yasser Qadhi's kind of mistalked, but he's talking about, kind of each letter and everything being completely accurate. But you're talking about verses disappearing and stuff. So you let me know about that. I will go away and look at that.
Yeah,
because,
I will find it.
Because to me, one of the big things of my faith is that the Quran is what was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is what we have today.
Okay.
Which you don't have, right? You don't have Jesus's exact words or anything. We've sort of established that you've got testimonies and things, which you're okay with.
Because that was the method of revelation. That's why I say I accept what.
I'm not okay with that. Not, you're all right with that.
Well, okay. So let's see. Because within the Ummah, the original Sahaba, there were disagreements, and some of the Sahaba had different verses. So particularly Ibn Masud, and I'm going to try and find you some of the verses.
Yeah, maybe give me the reference, or maybe if you want to talk next time about it, we can.
Let me just see.
Give me it to take away, and if you want to, I think I do know where you're going to go, but. Ibn Masud.
Okay, so because I've just had to find it very quickly.
Go ahead.
I'll read it out. You can take a picture.
Go ahead.
So Ubay ibn Ka'b.
Yeah.
So in his Quran, it agreed with Ibn Masud in some places, and it disagreed with Zayd's. So it says, let me just show you.
Is this pre-Uthman?
Yes.
Pre-Uthman?
Yes. So this is written in Islamic sources.
Okay.
So I can find more, and if you're here next time. So it says, so for the standard reading, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the Arabic.
Where's the reverse taken away?
So he omitted words.
Yeah.
So in some of the, let me find where.
There's nothing there that says verse taken away.
Okay, let me just hold on. I'll find it. Okay, so here is this is in Al-Qurtubi, tafsir of Surah Al-Azab. It says, Aisha narrates, Surah Azab contained 200 verses during the lifetime of the Prophet, but when the Quran was collected, we only found the amount that can be found in the present Quran. So here is tafsir Al-Qurtubi, one statement that verses have gone missing. And I'll try and find...
Wait, 200 verses?
Yeah.
Not surahs? Surah contain. So it's one surah containing that.
Yeah.
So
it's reduced.
Yeah. Okay.
So you said nothing has gone missing.
Yeah.
You said it was. And I'll find the Ibn Masud one, but finding it on the spot isn't easy.
All right.
And then we can wrap up on that.
Look, I appreciate your time and appreciate the fact that you're able to dialogue reasonably.
No problem.
Because that's not easy down here.
Oh, actually, and maybe next time we can speak. But I've just seen something that reminded me. In terms of what caused Yasser Qadhi's crisis in faith when he was quite young, is because he felt there were human elements added into the Quran.
Yeah.
So, are you aware of this?
Yeah.
Right. So that would be additions that you asked for. So there are additions that, because for example, with the
and Yasser Qadhi's speciality isn't even the preservation of the Quran. He's not even a scholar of that.
So I'll validate what I'm about to say. So for example,
he grew up in a Western he studied in Western universities.
But here's the problem. When you grow up in the Islamic world, you cannot criticize the Quran otherwise you will face severe consequences. And there was a scholar, I've forgotten his name, in Al-Azhar University in Egypt.
Is Yasser Qadhi still alive?
No, he's not dead.
Yeah, I know he's not. You said it.
Yeah, so I'm going to say, so he criticised and said there was human additions to the Quran, and he got kicked out of his job. He had to actually leave Egypt for quite a long time. I'll find out what his name is. That's why Western scholarship is more critical of the Quran, and that's why it's leading, and that's why these issues are coming out more in Western scholarship than in Islamic, because you cannot criticise the Quran in that same method.
It was taken very seriously.
Exactly. So the Quran says, do they not ponder upon the Quran? Are those who have found in it many errors and contradictions? So in the West, that's what we do, and we find many errors. Do you agree that yes, it's right? Yeah, and it was. You said that with the dialects, it was revealed by the Prophet. And we have someone called Haitham Sidki, for example, who's looked at the dialects within the different qira'at and said they are regionally inconsistent. So what I mean by that, for example, if I had, like in England we say trousers, in America they say pants. If I had a book of Harry Potter, I wouldn't expect on page 1 it to say pants and on page 2 it to say trousers. If Harry Potter is in the American dialect, and Americans don't understand trousers, then every time trousers is used, it would have to use the dialect of pants. That would be consistent. That would be would you agree that would be a consistent methodology of having something in that dialect? And what we find is when the claim of dialects, we don't find that consistency, because it'll be like this dialect in one sense and another dialect.
We're now talking about words and meanings of words, which is still a very strong. We're still talking about the Quran being preserved in an amazing way, aren't we?
Well, we can say it's
do you respect the preservation of the Quran?
I can respect the preservation, but it's not perfect preservation as Muslims claim. It's not the letter for letter, dot for dot. Every Quran is
I think
exactly
you've spoken
same.
to Mohammed Ijab on this topic, haven't you?
No, that was Chris.
And it was explained.
He said, from what I remember, that your scholars all disagree because no one knows what an Araf is. So he said, according to Tabari, if one half is preserved, then the Quran is preserved. But there's so many disagreements in what that actually Al-Sayuti quotes all the different opinions, so we can't actually say if it is preserved. And we know, like some of the verses that I gave, and next time I'll find it for you. Just check out Ibn Masud, and within Islamic literature, we can see some.
And just to be clear, you've got no issue with verses disappearing and stuff. You're testing my standard. Because your books. If we went into your book.
I'm saying in
if
the
you
Bible.
compared the two, it would be
I'm saying in the Bible.
A mismatch.
I'm saying in the Bible, there are.
It's a genre.
There are variants. No Christian has ever claimed the letter for letter, dot for dot, perfect preservation of the Bible. That's the Muslim claim. And when we investigated that, it was false. So that's why we have different standards. So if you think the Quran has to be perfectly preserved,
I don't think that was a Muslim claim.
Yes, it was. I can show you. Yasser Qadhi used to say that. Mansour used to say that. And the only thing is, I have the evidence, but it'll take me time to bring it up. Fine. So if we have another conversation, I'll come back. I'll
rewatch this and things that we've gone over. All right.
So nice conversation.
Appreciate it.
Next time we can go.
Quick question. What's your thing on Palestine, Israel?
I think there needs to be it needs to resolve this. There needs to be a resolution, because I think there is some justification in terms of the response to the Hamas attacks. Every country would, but whether it's gone too far, I think there needs to be a better balance in terms of human life, because no one wants to see anybody die. And as a Christian, it's not that we're in favour of.
Well, you're aware that as Christians being blown up too and spat at over there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's not just a case of, well...
No, I'm asking your opinion because I've turned up today and I've seen a lot of support for Israel from Christians, and that's baffling.
Christians
I disagree with your point about obviously a response, because I think we're talking about, you're obviously starting it October the 7th, and anyone reasonable now knows it was before that.
Well, that's what I'm
and
saying.
And they know obviously you've got an occupier versus an occupied state. So the context has to be
it's very complicated.
I don't think it's complicated.
I'll tell you why. Because
it's very simple.
This is what Christians ask. If you have Jewish people, Israelis, who were there before the influx of European Jews, right?
Yeah.
Now, the question would be, and I ask this in comparison with black people, there's a lot of black people who are in America, in Brazil, all these countries who were slaves. I believe they have a right to return to what their natural home is. So I'm saying, if some people might say, well, they're not real Jews. I don't believe that, but I also believe that if these are natural Jews,
they're not the original ones, are they? The Bible talks about the Canaanites.
No, but that's what
being massacred.
But I'm just saying my
yeah.
perspective. So I'm saying in terms of the with black people through slavery, even though it's generations.
Are you comparing the Jews to the black people with slavery?
Yeah, I'm just saying in terms of I feel a certain level of empathy to say that if there are people without a home, because let's be real about it. If they are descendants, whether people believe it or not, but let's just go with the premise that they are the descendants of the original Jews. If they are the descendants, then there are people without a home that have been displaced into many countries, and they're the only people on this planet that we can say that don't have their own nation. So I feel empathetic.
Well, the Kurds don't have a homeland. Plenty of people don't have a homeland.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I would say. My opinion would be people should be able to return.
And even now, there are a lot more in America than there are in Israel.
Yeah,
so they're fine over there.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is, my belief is that people should be able to return to what is their historical homeland.
So you give that Aborigines could take back Australia, the Romans could come and take back England.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. No, but that's what I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with that. The problem is the how. So I don't disagree with the right. I believe everyone should be, especially if they've been kicked out of their land historically. The how is where it becomes a problem, and that's
fine.
And that's what I'll say.
But just to clarify, you condemn the IDF for what they've done.
Condemn the
IDF.
Well, I think if they're killing innocent people on purpose, then I condemn any injustice. Injustice killing.
All right.
But I also support their right to retaliate. I know you'll say it goes back. And that's where it's a long conversation in itself, and that's where it gets muddied waters. So I'm just saying, on a very simplistic
The thing is, that retaliation, you could say the Palestinians were retaliating, couldn't you? So
but that's what I'm saying.
It's not very strong.
That's why I said it gets complicated. But I'm just saying,
but it's interesting, isn't it, why people would only give the right to the Israelis as a retaliation, but the Palestinians have to kind of just deal with it.
That's what my perspective would be. The Palestinians have been there a long time. They do have a right to be there, and they shouldn't be kicked out of the land either. There needs to be a way to. What people are.
And they're not being kicked out.
Is to reconcile the matter.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of principle, I would say I believe that people should be able to return to their historical homeland if they've been kicked out. Because I don't think anyone should not have a homeland, and that's why I say, even with slaves, I believe if they wanted to return to Africa, they should have a right to. But people can disagree, but that's just my opinion.
All right, I appreciate it.
Nice
All right, mate. Nice one. Cool.